We're live streaming on Facebook right now. Tits out.
Oh shit, dude! I didn't know we were gonna do that. I got I got tiny little. I don't even have visible nipples, dude.
My
I
my
don't
pig.
have nipples.
You don't have, I feel like that's from a show or something where like he pulls up his shirt and he doesn't have nipples and it's like
No, that's Kyle XY. He doesn't have a belly button. I got one of those. I don't have nipples.
damn, that's the most degenerate thing I've ever heard.
Not having nipples?
Yeah,
Maybe. I
you should
don't know.
you should
That's probably like the most advanced thing you could do.
you should get that checked
Have them
out sometime.
surgically removed. They don't come off, dude.
That's pretty, or just make them big or make them different colors. There's gonna be so many like genetic and modifications going forward. Like the transgender and SJW, all that shit won't be enough. Like they gotta go to the next level and be like, we're trans species. Like I don't know. They always
That's
gotta
already a thing. Did you hear about that guy who like had his hand surgically removed so that like he could be a dog boy?
the dog. Oh god. Oh dude. Yeah. There's a couple people that I follow that just like, oh my god, they post like the most degenerate shit that like the leftists do. Like there was one guy that was hilarious. He was like his fetish was like something about poop, and then like the next day it was like, sorry, this guy has died, but like because of eating his own feces or something like that.
That's just old, dude. It's getting worse. It's constant. It's consistently getting worse and worse and worse and more normalized. Like eventually, it's like the school shooting thing. Like it's just not news anymore.
Hmm. Well, I mean, like, so what do you think about like the course of history? Like, I feel like people, especially the older you get, the more you feel like old people are always saying everything's going to shit. But like, uh, like, is stuff getting better at the same time, or is it just literally we are just on this just endless path of degradation until we just fucking
Yeah, we're definitely in a path of degradation. Like when the okay boomer thing became a trend, I started looking into that. I was like, why are they saying okay boomer? Like who invented this? Like who decided that this was a thing, right? Like I'm like 90% sure that like the majority of memes come from like a psyop, like that they want us to be thinking about these things that like most people don't make memes.
well, so
But
yeah, go ahead.
so like during the 60s when like the boomers were becoming a generation, the first half of it was going through like the sexual revolution. They had weed, they had anti-war, like
Right, the
all of
60s
that,
and the
right?
70s, right?
It was basically the same thing that like millennials are going through now, but like to a smaller degree. And so like even to point the finger at okay boomer, it's like they didn't really want that in the first place. Like somebody did that to them, right? Like that was when communism first infiltrated the United States. That's when everything was happening with what's his face, like the red scare and everything. Like so they went through their same phase and we want to like point the finger at them, but like now they're starting to realize like we fucked up. And like in 50 years everybody's going to look back and look at our generation and say like they did this to us. And it's like, no, dude, like we didn't want this either. I don't know where this came from.
So, to your first point, like this idea that like every meme or every especially like trendy meme is a psyop, like I think that yes, like whenever I make a meme, like there's usually a psychological operation behind it. Like I want to get a message across. Like when someone writes a story or creates a movie, like they typically want, it's like this larger definition of what a psyop is. But then like whether it's a nefarious psyop, like meant to like degrade the population and control the population, like I mean, not everyone is negative. Not every meme and trend is negative. Some of it just develops organically, and I think it just catches on. I think it's like, you may theorize that like it could only rise to popularity because it's being pushed by like whatever Zionist forces or something. But like I think a lot of memes like come to be just because like they are the perfect expression of what the collective psyche is trying to express at that time, if that makes sense.
No, no, and I totally agree. And I think that there are some organic memes, but like I also know that like most organic roots, um, organizations and like um expressions usually get hijacked. Like that guy who organized Occupy Wall Street recently got invited to some fucking really really popular, inner circle bullshit. That was
Circle
like
jerk.
this year.
So,
Davos, I think it was. Let me look that up real quick.
I mean,
Yeah,
what was that?
Occupy Wall Street Davos.
Is that Betsy Davis or something like that? Davis.
It's kind of like Bilderberg as far as I understand. Davos, Occupy Wall Street.
I mean, I'm just trying to think about what the connection.
Tomorrow's Hurt was his name. I'm not gonna look too closely into it. Something if anybody's interested in it should look into it. Like and that's like been the most frustrating thing to me recently. And I mentioned it on the site. I was just like, there's too much shit for me to try to like go through to
Right.
like keep up.
Yeah, it's hard to be plugged into it. It just runs you dry. Like whether you're going too deep down a hole or like whether you're just like there's just so much information, it can definitely be overwhelming. Um,
Well, it was like I got really into that Iran thing, and that ended up being like a not nothing burger. But at this point, like nobody gives a shit anymore. Like I've still been following Iran. Like anything that only lasts for a couple of days, like that kind of tweaks my interest. But like stuff that goes on for weeks and weeks and weeks, like I'm just usually like it's probably bullshit. And like I heard about Virginia, this shit going down in Virginia like 2 months ago.
right. Um, I mean, that's another like kind of fact that you always have to deal with, which is that most people are just gonna not care at all. A lot of people don't know what's going on at all, and if they do know, then they get a dose of it, a small dose, and then they just memory hole it. And you know that's like the natural reaction to things is to want to be a sheep, is to want to not just stick with the herd, just keep your head underground. Like especially with the pressures that we face today, it's even more so. People don't want to wake up. They don't want to face the hard truth. Like it's just how it is.
They're deliberately confusing us, dude. Like I don't even think it's so like we've moved past the point of just like pushing people into complete apathy. It's like we're at a point right now where they're deliberately confusing us.
Well, I say that there's three main players. Like I originally used the analogy of the sheep, the wolves, and the shepherd. The sheep are obviously like the most people who just are just being controlled and brainwashed. You've got the wolves, which are the people that are trying to basically like manipulate and try to consume the sheep, and then you have the shepherds who are trying to protect. So basically, so those are the three parties. So I was referring to like the mass of people. The mass of people just want to be like just they are confused. They have no idea what's going on. They want things simple, and they want the simple things, and and they play right into the schemes of the engineers, of the cultural engineers for sure. The Zionist scum.
What you're trying to say, but like I would go as far to say that like there's wolves in sheep's clothing who don't realize they're wearing costumes.
Well, so you make a great point. Like in that thread where I originally posted that idea, like I started to explore like these other archetypes, such as like the sheepdog, which is like obviously a shepherd that's also a wolf that protects the flock, or you've got like a wolf wearing sheep clothes and hiding, or like a wolf pretending to be a shepherd. Like you've got all these like this pretending to be that, but these are the building blocks. Is like these three archetypes. Like so, like that's what you are. Like that is your intent, and then it's like, well, what do you disguise yourself as? And a lot of times, in order to be effective, you have to kind of play other
The
roles.
only thing that matters at this point is like the truth, right? Like the truth is what matters, and I think a lot of people really easily buy into memes and different archetypes and like God, what the fuck was the word that I used earlier? There's a word for that entire concept behind those like one word ideas. Like I was telling somebody about it, like that entire thing where women are like, my body, my choice, like that thing that I posted where it was like it like crime is perpetuated by poverty kind of shit.
I mean, it sounds like that is like a meme or a
It is a
stereotype, a
meme.
stereotype, a meme, an
It's not a
archetype, a symbol.
stereotype. It's a meme.
Yeah, yeah,
Like a stereo. I don't know. For me, stereotypes have a negative connotation usually, but like there's also those good ones like black guys are good at basketball, black guys can rap. Like those are also stereotypes, but like generally to me, stereotypes are negative.
yeah. I think that's a good point. Like typically, when the word stereotype is thrown around, and most things that people would consider a stereotype does have a negative connotation, but at the core, there are just patterns. Like there are patterns, like racial patterns, cultural patterns, all kinds of patterns and correlations that you can make. And of course, like the ADL and the Zionists have like tried to, and the SJWs as their legion have tried to like demonize any kind of like they're trying to combat logic and pattern seeking. Like there was that one article that was like a, it seemed like a satire where some idiot was like saying that like pattern recognition is like hate speech or something. I think you may have even been the one that shared it. It's fucking crazy. It's some like straight Orwellian tactics.
They don't want us to have any culture on like any level. Like they're attacking whites right now because like they're infiltrating white societies. Like they like it as soon as like and I say we're, it's not me. And that's the funniest part about all this shit to me is like it's not me. Like I am the result of racial mixing. Like it
But you
as
still
soon
like
as they are done with white society, as soon as they are done with white society, they will do the exact same thing with much more ease on every other level. Like they want to destroy your culture, they want to destroy your society, they want to destroy your planet.
yeah. So we maybe even talked about it a little bit, and I'm sure you have an interesting perspective. So like about like this idea of ethno states, of segregation, like versus multiculturalism. Like, what is there a balance to be found? So should we try to go one way or the other? Obviously, like these forces are pushing us towards multiculturalism, but we do have to account for some of the things, like some of the, like whenever it's like if you're painting a picture and you mix all the colors together, you just have a fucking brown, right? You just have a big brown puddle. And so like, sometimes there is benefit to diversity and keeping things separate to an extent, but of course there are benefits of multiculturalism. So like, what do you think if you could
I've been having
choose?
some arguments with myself about like the importance of eugenics and stuff like that, but I also think that like that meme every race has its place is a very important thing, right? Like the brain drain has been going on in foreign countries for like years, right? So like over in Chile, there was this kid who independently invented radio, right? And like allowed for that to be spread throughout his country. And like, what did the United States do? Like, oh, we'll take that kid and we'll have him work for Google.
I know, right? Yeah. That is a difficult like kind of just natural side effect of like the evolution of cultures and like global geography is like you have certain civilizations that just evolved and like succeeded, and then it kind of creates this like permanent position to where most of the other cultures are kind of like subverted, or enslaved to in a way, and that kind of thing just happens. It just gets sucked up to the top. I mean, I don't think there's even too much we can do about it at this point.
What do you mean? We'll just stop adopting kids from other countries where they're actually being a benefit?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's really tough. Like, I think it plays into like the interaction between free market and then like what is the government's role to regulate? Because obviously, if you're a business, you're like let's get the best talent, like let's get smart kids and stuff. A business, uh, unless the CEO or the board is just like somehow like super.
I've already pointed this shit out to you, dude. Like that part where like the amount of money you make and like productivity separates is when we started bringing people in from Mexico. When we separated from the gold standard, when like everything got fucked up.
Right, and that's another reason why if you're
Where like
if you
everything started right before the 60s, right? Like that's when that happened.
yeah, right. And what I'm saying is like if you're corporate minded, if you're profit driven, if that's like the main margin, if you're not thinking about anything else, then you're going to flood the country with immigrants because that surplus is the labor pool, which drives down the labor costs. And yeah, you can brain drain the other places too and get the good talent. So and corporations are doing both of these things. So who is there to step in? And I would say the people
You
are there. The people are there to step in, and it should be the government by proxy and by representation of the
No,
people. That's what a government should
it
be.
should be. It will never be because corporations pay the government to make their laws and rules. Like
That's the
that's our
fundamental.
biggest issue. Like, and
Right.
that's the thing that's the conclusion that I've been coming to. Like, is that's why we are both so angry. That is why communists are angry. They're angry about half the problem, and that's why we're angry is because about the other half of the problem. But when it comes down to it, we need to be mad at elites.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
need to be mad at the government.
Well, that's what's
We
so
need to be
cool.
mad at these people who run these corporations.
You're absolutely right. Like the fundamental struggle is, like you said, the class
It's
conflict.
class. It's
Yeah,
class warfare,
it's
dude.
the wealthy versus, and the government's supposed to be the mediator, but the government typically sways in favor
They
of
got
the
bought off.
wealthy because
They got bought off. Yes, the government was great. Yes, American
so
government was great,
so
and then it got bought off.
here's a point. Here's a potential argument for how technology could be helpful, which is that if we look at government as like the supposed mediator between the people and the rich, and obviously historically it's much easier for the rich to sway for the rich to hijack the government in their favor, because it's like the rich is like a very small cabal of people with a lot of resources and a lot of intelligence, and they can just easily kind of monopolize. So ideally what the people have to do is like we have to organize, and we have to, like, that's the only way. But most people, it's just statistically aren't as, we have to pull our resources together, which is logistically a difficult thing to do. But the more technology we have, the more we can be brought together by technology, the more our ideas are on the same page, the more we get together, the easier chance we have to basically combat that. And
No,
yes,
I definitely think that, like, and I made some posts about this the other night because, like, I got super inspired. I was like, dude, we can fucking fix this if we really, really wanted to, right? Like,
hell
I
yeah,
think that technology stands currently as a very and foundational important part of like what we need to do moving forward, right? Like, but disregardless, like, even if you're a communist, like, they will take your videos down if you're saying something that doesn't go along with their agenda, and like definitely if you're right wing leaning, right?
right.
Like, going back to traditional values is like a very important thing for us because like that's that half of things. Like, right wing economics, no, left wing economics, right wing culture, that's what we want.
Um, it's funny. Like a lot of people, and like when I was younger, it was almost like the other way around. It was almost like I want to be more liberal socially, and I want to be more conservative, like fiscally. And now it's like the other way around. It's like we want to fucking destroy this out of hand upper class, but we want to preserve right wing like social values, and this is interesting how things change. Um,
No,
it,
no, no, and they've done that forever. Like, I'm sure you've heard that meme where like, oh yeah, Democrats were the ones who supported the KKK. It's like, well, when I was growing up, right wingers were the ones who wanted to suppress the free speech of liberals.
Yeah, yeah. There was I actually researched that because yeah, like historically there was a big swap between like the parties, and of course
It's
it's been,
always swapping, dude. It's just it's
yeah.
always
They're
switching
change
hands.
they're changing swapping, especially during like the civil rights movement. That was a big contention time where things change. And one point, I actually looked up something very
We're
interesting.
gonna, if nothing happens, dude. If nothing happens in our lifetime, if we never accomplish anything, it's gonna be the same thing that we see over in Europe, where like even though they call them liberals, and liberals is right wing over there,
Yeah,
it's going to be the same thing here. Like, you're just going to have the Democratic Party fracture. Like, they're talking about splitting Washington D.C. into like over 50 different states. Like, they've been saying for years that they want to split Illinois into 4 different states. California should be 4 different states, right? Like, it's going to be the same idea, but like there's always going to be that resistance party that's like slightly to the right, slightly to the right.
but on the whole,
So
they're moving in a direction together, right?
it's always going to be left, dude. It's always going to be left because that's like there's individualism and there's collectivism, and collectivism is a party of the left.
Right.
It's a
Well,
left wing
well,
idea.
that's why like leftism the idea is like liberal is progressive is like because that's like the direction we're moving, But and here's the thing too is like we are moving like it's a collective process of evolution where we are moving forward, but we're just moving in all kinds of directions. Like the process of evolution requires mutation, so we have people doing all kinds of random different shit, and we have to just say like yes we want to grow, yes we want to evolve, but part of that process is deciding like out of all this random dumb shit that people are doing, like what are we going to like say is inherent. And of course the traditional technique is to be conservative and to be traditionalist, is to say we are going to stick with what works. So it's a challenge to conservatives to say hey we need to move forward, but we need to use discretion. And it's a challenge to liberals to say, hey, I know that y'all are trying to do all this crazy new shit and be progressive, but we have to acknowledge that not every single thing you're doing is productive for society. It is not going to be good for us, for our children, right? And so it's a big part of it.
Right, but like the thing that we're currently going through is just like blatantly ignoring the idea of pragmatism, right? Like, so pragmatism is the idea is like I will see what works. We'll try different things, and then we'll move forward with that.
Right.
But like right now we're just like, hey, let's put 12-year-olds in mass on hormone replacement
Yeah,
therapy,
that's what I'm
and then
saying.
just
Yeah.
see what happens.
Well, and that's what you have at the far end of both spectrum. At the far end of the left spectrum, you have people doing crazy stuff like this just because it's new, just because it's different, just because whatever, and all these kind of different psychological illnesses are manifesting in this area. And then the conservatives, on the other hand, are like, well, we'll just shut it all down and just like turtle and don't grow at all. So like, we've brought up. I made that post earlier about how my two highest values are like truth and balance, and you said it a minute ago that like truth is like the most important, and now we're seeing another example of how balance is another. It's just truth and balance are two of the highest virtues like I've come across.
That's like what's been the most scariest part about this thing for me, right? Like, so all these white women are getting abortions, right? Surgical abortions, and like nobody, it's an emotional argument, but like when it comes down to it, like there is facts to this information, right? Like if you get a surgical abortion after the part where like you can get a pill taken, you are going to have a lower likelihood of being able to have children. Like you will have a higher chance of having ectopic pregnancies. You will probably go through a what is it called? Fuck. Postpartum depression. Like there are all these issues that come up because of having an abortion that like doesn't fall under the category of like just wear a condom, take your birth control which has its own issues, take a plan B. Like you have other options besides that, but like when it comes down to surgical abortion, it has heavy impact on like women, and nobody wants to talk about that kind of shit. It's just like shout your abortion, take a before after picture on Instagram of your abortion, and like everybody's just supposed to be cool with it. Like
Yeah,
give your
yeah,
tax dollars to my abortion. Like nobody's gonna give their tax dollars so I can own an AK.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
human rights are completely devolving. Like the idea of like what human rights are have completely been wiped out. They mock you for your First Amendment right, they mock you for your Second Amendment right, but then tell you that you have to fund illegal immigrants to have housing. Like healthcare is a human right, like et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
I
Like they
think
say everything that like takes your money from you is a human right.
right. I think that really, I think the whole concept of a right is pretty overrated for one and toxic for another. Because I think it just instills in people a hold on, I got a fart. Oh yeah, it instills in people a sense of entitlement. And Mark, one of the guys from the group, is like he read Starship Troopers, or I think that's what the sci-fi novel is called. And in that society, like people have to earn the right to vote, and it makes them like they have to. There's civilians, and then there's citizens. Like you have to work to be a citizen, like whether it's through military service or something.
That's how it used to be.
Yeah, and that's how it should still be. It's just like you got to like people are just so fucking entitled, and that's definitely a big part of the degeneracy for sure.
The only reason people got the right to vote in the first place was because like murdering an entire civilian population would look pretty bad, right? Like it used to be rich, white, landowning men who could vote, and then it became, and they were all literate, right? Like there was that period of time where like most of American society was not literate. Like
Right.
during that entire period where we were like passing around the papers and stuff like that to make the Constitution, people read, dude. I don't really know what the answer is. I really don't know what the answer is, but like I think a big thing is the return to community.
Yeah.
The smaller the community, the better off we're gonna be.
Well, that
I,
reminds me
I
of
don't believe in voting. I don't like it. It's fucked up. Like, oh, well, more people agree with me, and I'm retarded, and I made this bad decision, and so did everybody else. So now I can tell you what to do. That's
yeah.
fucking stupid.
Well, I think it's like best case scenario. Like yes, like mob rule can be very toxic, but it does help prevent.
Mob rule is toxic. That's
Yeah.
how we ended
Well,
up here.
I mean, but it does help to prevent tyrannous rule. Like tyranny and fascism can also be very bad. So like the best
No,
case scenario, you have a good leader.
no
Worst case,
gods, no masters, dude.
huh?
No gods, no masters. Fuck government, dude.
That's
Fuck government.
so. I'm sure throughout the course of history, there were plenty of people and even communities who believed in that. But do you know what happened to them? They got wrecked by the people who said, "Yeah, government's not too bad because government helps bring us together and helps raise strong armies to defend ourselves and conquer other lands." So like it's just that's one
It'll
idea that's
just be rhesus monkeys, dude.
huh?
It'll just be rhesus monkeys.
Racist or recent? What do you say?
Okay, so it's anybody who's listening. Rhesus monkeys is a completely different thing, but here's what happened, right? So they made this pile, right? And they had all these monkeys circling around it, right, in this like enclosure, and they put some food at the top, and like the monkeys would climb up the pile and try to get the food, and then like they'd spray them with these hoses.
Right. Yeah, I know the experiment. Yeah, and then they introduce a new batch, and like the first batch has been
Either
conditioned not
either
to go
way,
up
yeah.
there.
So you get the concept, right? All we have to do is train people to think like government bad, not good. Just live, dude. Like we
Interesting.
need to completely retrain our entire conceptualization around how we organize society because everything we've tried so far is completely fucked.
So this brings up a good point, which is that it's not off the table. It's not off the table to return to a lot of the things that we've once had, like community and more tribal existence and more in touch with nature. But and so it's
Have
almost
you
like
read Walden? Have you read Walden too?
no, I want to though. It sounds dope.
You need to read that book, dude.
Yeah, I said that. That's of all the ones we talked about. I think that's the one I want to jump into.
Like even when I'm thinking like it's not the same it's not the concept presented in the book. It's the feeling behind it. Like
Right.
get away from everything and try something new.
Hell yeah. And I like that it's called Walton too because like that was the whole transcendentalist vibe. That was the whole like Thoreau and Emerson vibe. Uh,
It,
yeah.
it makes me dude like I wish that people actually like watched us and shit because like BF Skinner dude like that he fucking changed everything for me.
Hell yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, I'll do it because, like, influential thinkers and things that I've come across have certainly shaped my thinking. And so, if I
We're
could,
just animals at the end of the day, dude.
yeah,
BF Skinner, Pavlov's dog, same
yeah,
dude.
yep, yeah, I recognize that name, and I thought the exact same thing. And that's, he sounds very interesting. Like he was into psychology and community and stuff like that. And yeah, that's very up my alley. So I'll definitely give that a check. I'll
I
check
would
that out.
love to have a conversation with you after you read that book.
Yeah, I'll do it. And Shelby was saying it's not that big, so yeah, I'll definitely
It's
try it.
not.
So you said the answer you felt like, or at least a core part of what we need to do going forward is like a return to community, and I felt that way for a while. And one of the big thinkers that got me on that track was like Terrence McKenna, who said that he called it the archaic revival, which was like this kind of awakening force in people to go back to our tribal roots, like to our tribal pagan roots, like that humans are wired to be in a tribe, like that. We need a social unit which is like of that. Uh, of that size, basically, like to where you can know everybody in the group. Everybody in the group is like aware and kind of like on the same page to an extent. And I think, yeah, I think that's a big part of it. Like, even though our society isn't like perfectly organized around that, people pick up on that. Like, that's like why, of course, like look at the Christian community. Like, that's one of the most like or religious communities in general are the most like tight knit, like overarching communities that shape our culture, that shape our politics, that shape our businesses. Like, so I kind of want to function on that level. Like, it's going to take a while for
Well,
us to
well, well, and
transition.
here's the thing, right? Like, okay, so I can probably put this in a better perspective. What do you think would happen if a black guy showed up to an all-white church?
Um, I mean, honestly, like I grew up in a church, and we actually had like a token like black couple family who actually came by for a little while, and I mean,
That's
people are
that's not what I'm asking. I'm saying, what do you think, like, if in a majority white society, if a black guy showed up to an all-white church, what do you think would happen? Would they beat him? Would they
well.
lynch him?
Well, I'm using as an example because I actually lived through that, an example of
Yeah,
that. And people, I mean, Christians are taught to be like loving and accepting.
yeah. Assimilation is completely possible. Like, that's not what society is about anymore. Like, assimilation is no longer a part of society because diversity is our strength.
Right.
Like, I still completely, like, and that's why we're allowed to have this conversation, even though I'm, like, this color or whatever. Like,
Oh, wait. Hold on, hold on. You're not white.
no.
We gotta end this. All right. It's been a good show, everybody. Just kidding.
Yeah, yeah, cut it off. Like, I don't know. Maybe I've spent too much time on 4chan, but
4chan has like brainwashed you into like being a white person.
no, you brainwashed me by telling me that the Jews did this.
Yeah, I mean, but like that was a whole new concept to me within the last year. Like this idea that like Jews are, like throughout time you just hear like, oh, Jews just yeah, they're just doing their thing over there. But then you're like,
I would click out of videos that said that shit.
you would what?
I would click out of videos that said
See,
that
you were
shit.
exposed to it, but you were like, no. See, I felt like I wasn't even like exposed to it. Like as soon as I was exposed to it, like I am with any idea, I give it away. I'm like, what is that? Does that idea have
That's
anything
why I
to
was
it?
a libertarian for such a long amount of time, and like I'm kind of trying to get back to that, but I still don't think that like being a libertarian, like that school of thought, is super valid. But
Yeah.
like I wanted to believe like the color of your skin does not matter.
You're saying you want to believe that, or you do believe that?
I don't think that libertarian principles matter, but I think being a libertarian values, stupid. But the color
you,
of your skin,
you sound like Unga Boonga, libertarian, stupid.
yeah, yeah. I just think that the color of your skin doesn't necessarily mean that you shouldn't be part of what moves us forward.
I
I
agree.
think
I agree. Yeah, we should not be. I mean, though there are some racial, cultural lines to pay attention to, like ultimately, that's not how we should draw our line whenever we're building our
culture is more
society.
important than knowledge. Assimilation is more important than anything.
Yeah, it's more important. I mean, I mean, to me, it's yeah, it's never been about race to me. Like, honestly, if I ever like, I mean, like, race is of course is a hot topic and it's an edgy topic, and you can use it to like get people's attention and like make jokes and teach things ultimately. But yeah, like at the end of the day, like there's respectable people of all races and there's piece of shit people of all races, and
Well, and that's why I still agree with like, and like this is edgy, like eugenics, like that's probably necessary.
yeah, I think I mean it like I don't believe we're going to be able to put caution tape around that technology and not use it. Like any geneticist or futurist will tell you, we're going to start out by using it for like obvious medical conditions, like in genetic conditions, and then it's going to be like, well, now we can like make your immune system a little bit stronger to help you avoid getting these things in the first place. And then like, well, let's go to the
That's
next level,
progenics.
huh?
That's progenics, completely different thing.
Well, now I think by definition, eugenics is like. Hold on, I think eugenics is hold on, let me look at the definition of eugenics.
Progenics and eugenics are different. Here, you look that up, and I'm gonna go smoke a cigarette.
All right.
check if I'm retarded. Yeah, no, I know what I was talking about.
Jesus. Oh man. Talking about abortions, that Taco Bell went right through me.
I
Oh.
was kind of thinking about the entire progenics eugenics thing.
Oh, so I looked up the definition, and actually I was surprised that like eugenics seems to talk like rather than talking about like genetic editing, it's talking about like artificial selection of humans, like uh,
Yeah,
controlled breeding.
yeah.
So,
No more retards, no more like ugly people, no more fat people. Like
but I guess
you wean them out, right? And
the
then
reason
progenics will make everybody better.
so I guess the reason why well number one progenics didn't even come up in Google, but and number two I guess the reason why
You couldn't find progenics on Google.
I even typed in progenics definition and nothing came up. Um, so I guess it hasn't made it
Weird, dude.
into like.
I pointed that out a couple of days ago on YouTube, where like, or not on YouTube, but on Google, where like I looked up Antifa and like the news tab was just like no news tab.
Yeah, it's just gone. There's memory hold it.
It was like a day after the entire thing with like Antifa, like we'll burn Milwaukee thing came out.
So I wanted to make a point earlier. You talked about how like we don't need to be fighting like right versus left. We need to come together and fight the elite, right? And so, weren't there were examples of like far left groups at Virginia, right? Like that's what guns are one thing that like unites the left and the right. I think maybe.
I'm still trying to sift through that. Like, okay, so like 2 years ago, I think that Antifa groups, and that's the thing. So there's guys like you and me, and then there's like Antifa and the KKK and like legitimate organizations who are
Wait,
like,
whoa! I think you just overstepped. You just assumed that we're not in the KKK.
yeah, we're not in the KKK.
Yeah, we're not.
Yeah, we're not in the KKK. But there's these organizations, right? Like you and I will never be involved with people who are getting caught running guns from the cartel over the Mexican border so that we can attack ICE, right?
Yeah.
Well, Antifa got caught for that a couple years ago, right? So like
Yeah.
every president that we've ever had has caused an increase in guns, but when Trump got elected, he was the first um president who caused an increase in guns on the left.
Interesting. Very good. Cool.
Yeah.
That's good.
It's fine, like, right? Like every time I see somebody saying like, "Oh, transgenders need to buy more guns," like gays need to buy more guns, like I post that like the fucking what is it? The that meme where it's like Jerry being let out of the fucking like child playhouse by that
Yeah. Yeah.
alien.
Yeah. You can leave the whole time. You could
That
do.
was always allowed.
Hell yeah, yeah, dude. I get so like I feel so good like when I see any yeah, any ideology who's like willing to like arm themselves and like be like I feel like if you get to that point where you're thinking about that and you're like arming yourself and training yourself to fight for what you believe in, like if you
Yeah.
make it to that point, then the ideas that brought you there must like that they make it through a gauntlet. Like if you arrive at that point, then you must believe in your ideas, and that means that they're pretty strong, and I respect that.
Well, in my opinion, fuck yeah, defend yourself, dude. Like if anybody wants to hurt you, you have the absolute right to defend yourself. Aw, a little tabby.
Yeah, she's so pretty.
Like there's no reason that we have to hurt each other. There's absolutely no reason that we have to hurt each other. Like if you don't like the way that I think, go somewhere else. Like and if I don't like the way you think, I'll go somewhere else. But like that is decreasingly becoming less of an option.
Yeah, yeah, we're running out of space. Like I think historically that was the solution was just to go somewhere else. And of course there were plenty of fucking conflicts. Like there's just like we disregard this like I've been watching these like medieval battles videos and like there are just so many fucking battles and conflicts and kings and kingdoms and empires and bloodshed. Like it's just like we have this whole violent history of fighting and
Good.
yeah, I mean, but it strengthened us. I mean, it was natural selection in some way, but you also have to consider like it's almost like natural selection of the dumb, like of dumb ideologies like Christianity and stuff. That's like telling people to like die.
Don't say that Christianity is dumb to me in this stream, please. I don't want to even go on that pathway. I'm not even a Christian. I'll defend Christianity.
We could talk about. I think about it a lot, and recently I actually went to church.
You don't understand how important religion is.
Huh?
If you want to like fucking poo-poo religion, you have no idea how important that shit is.
Well, obviously I'm not. Okay, so obviously it's here, and it had some kind of evolutionary like significance. It didn't just get here on a whim. So I mean, like, we can talk about it. Like, what did Christianity provide, and what are its
Okay,
shortcomings?
so there's one colony, one single colony in the United States, right? Like from the original founders, and like at one point there was 80% of the people in the United States who had identified as Christian
Right,
from one colony out of 13.
right. So what about it?
It grew in importance over time and it like made us a collective. Like what strengthened the black community was like identifying with Christian values. Like what
Well,
strengthened
we have to go even farther back. Like, we have to go back to Europe and the Middle Ages, where Christianity was already hella spread, and go back even farther.
it's a culture. It's a culture. Culture is more important than knowledge. Culture has more definition on like people and like their norms and
Yeah,
their behaviors
yeah.
than like anything else.
I understand that Christianity is a culture. So like,
So
but
like
like,
pure
what?
Christianity destroys culture, destroys norms, destroys society.
Well, it does.
The
Okay.
first thing that we did when we invented the internet was like everybody attack Christianity.
Yeah.
But don't say anything about Muslims, don't say anything about Jews, don't say anything about Buddhism, just kill Christianity.
Well, that's what most people were like directly subject to. So that naturally that's what they
I
were.
don't think so. I think that like at that point and still today, Muslims and Buddhism was I don't know the right word for Muslims. Fuck their like face Mecca 5 times a day bullshit. They always were and always will be bigger.
What do you mean bigger?
It more people believe that bullshit. Like I definitely think that religion and believing in God is a bullshit idea, but I believe in like a cultural norm.
Yeah, I agree that like you need a
And
unify.
religion is the best way to impart that.
I agree that religion is needed and is good. I agree that culture is good, that unification is good. I agree with all that. But who's to say that that particular thing has to be Christianity and not something else? Like why Christianity
It
versus
also because Christianity is what created Western society.
okay, but why did
I don't
Christianity?
I,
Why?
I don't know. I don't know. I haven't
Okay,
looked into it that much, but all I know is that Christianity was a part of this was part of the culture that created society, and now we want to kill it. Like I'm not going to buy into anything that like communists, feminists, like Marxists, like all of that side of the field is like also going to pull on.
so
Like I
you're
said, I don't know.
establishing your. I mean that's valid
It's
to.
something to think about. That's something that I have needed to think about, and I guess I'm expressing that to you. Like I don't know.
Well,
I don't know.
well,
But I
right.
think that it's weird that the first thing that the internet killed was Christian Western God.
Right. So it's respectable that you formed your opinion on Christianity based on like you know that it's associated with the rise of Western civilization, and you know that that the people that you oppose, who you know are shitty, also oppose Christianity. So some part of you wants to inherently defend it because these shitty people are against it, and that's valid. And I hold some of that. Like I do credit it with creating Western civilization for good or bad, and I do know that a lot of shitty people that Christianity holds a lot of communities together and helps fight a lot of bullshit and a lot of degeneracy. But we also have to number one, it's good to know why it's
I also know that like it positively impacted Mexicans and African Americans.
yeah. Well, I think a lot of the reason why is because that was their way of integrating with Western society. Like that was their because and also like Christianity gave them an opportunity to do so because Christianity was preaching about a unified like even back to the beginning, and this is again why it's so important to understand the beginnings of Christianity because like the whole reason why Christianity split from Judaism was because Jews were like we're the master race and only we are saved, and the idea is that that Jesus and the Christians were like no, anybody can be saved, and so that was a huge thing, and so that that may have been critical to its success and to its spread among other things. But I think there's a lot of factors involved that should be considered, especially like here in the modern day, whenever we grow up and we decide like I want to be a part of a community. I think religion's very good. Like should I just like go balls deep with Christianity or should I try to maybe explore some other ideas? And that's kind of where I've been at, where I think we're all at to an extent.
Well, you can be black and end up in the what were they called? The Hebrew Israelites,
Ow!
the black Hebrew Israelites.
Well, have you ever seen you watch how much Eric Andre?
No.
They did this one skit that was so funny where they went to the streets like New York and they were like dressed up all funny and they were like, L. Ron Hubbard was a black man, like black Scientologist, and it was fucking hilarious. Like it was just this whole random skit.
L. Ron Hubbard was a black man.
Yeah, and this guy like walks up to him and he's like, "I'm Jesus," and they're like, Eric Andre's like, "You're not Jesus." He's like, "Prove it. Take a poop in front of us and turn it into wine." We'll have to watch it sometime.
That is kind of funny.
Hey,
I
kitty
like that.
cat, you were so pretty.
Put the kitty in front of me again.
She's I'm holding her right here and she's like chewing on my hand.
Hold on, I'll go get a kitty.
Look, you gotta see her so I can sit back down.
Oh,
She's just chewing on my fucking hand.
I love it.
Oh, you little demon. Ow! Ow! Claws hurt. Claws and teeth. Ah, ah, hey, hey, hey. Ah, ah. That hurts. That hurts. Meow. Holy moly, why are you shedding so much, cat? Jesus. What the hell? I guess this shirt just collects that shit.
The other one is too fat, so I had to get that one.
My parents' cat is so fat. It looks like he's about to explode. Like it looks like he's about to pop.
Big old fatty.
Hey, Sully.
Dude, cats are dope. I
Yeah.
like them mostly because I don't have to take care of them that much.
Yeah, they are pretty independent, but they're little shit sometimes.
Yeah.
Big Sully, our dog, is a baby. He's a baby. He needs so much attention, Sully.
Yeah, no, religion is usually not the debate that I want to get into, mostly because like I don't know that much about it, but I know that like anywhere it's present has had a positive impact on like societal cohesion.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, but paganism did too. So like, why did paganism die out? Like, it's important.
I don't
It's
even know what paganism is. Like I see that
bruh.
argument all the time, and I don't even like
Bro,
bother to.
like like you still have research to do. Like you have gone
I know,
real.
dude. Like, and I was saying that in the threads. Like, there's so much shit that I'm retarded on, and I will always be retarded. Like, I don't want to be an expert in everything, like, because I can't be.
You don't need to be an expert in everything, but you need to have a, your model of reality needs to be pretty diverse in order to, you don't need to know everything, but you need to know of everything and like say, well, like I don't know what that is, but I know I can like deduce certain things. Like I know that that's a religion, and I've heard paganism with regards to Christianity, so it must have been some kind of like ID,
You
like
don't know paganism, but you know everything else. You're a dumbass. Like, okay, what?
Well, I mean, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying like that's a pretty. I mean, like, well, you've said that
I
you did.
don't care. I don't care about religion.
You
Like,
say
and
you
maybe
say you
that's
don't
my
care about
next.
history and you don't care about
Yeah,
religion
I
and you don't
care
care
about
about
history. Yeah,
psychology.
maybe that's my next step. Maybe my next step is caring about religion. Right now, like I care about theosophy. That's like my thing. And like you can do whatever the fuck you want, dude, as far as I'm concerned. Like
Okay.
I don't care. I think that having in it like an ideology that you impart from like a set of rules that you want to live by helps. Saying I'm gonna do what feels good is not gonna help society. That's
So,
like the worst thing.
right. So you're acknowledging that it's good to have a framework and not just be like completely nihilistic and hedonistic, but you haven't developed it yet, and that's fine. Like you've already acknowledged that it's something to think about. And that's a future conversation for sure. But like I just wanted to make that point that like at times you've been like fuck history, I don't need that. Fuck psychology, I don't need that. Fuck religion, I don't need that. But like these things
And
all
I've
are
changed. And I have changed. That was a
yeah
year ago.
yeah
That was a whole year ago that we did these fucking vid chats.
yeah.
I change.
Okay.
Most people don't change. I change.
All right. Cool. Well, we don't have to talk about things that you obviously don't understand. Just kidding.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
you can tell me about it if you want.
Well, but yeah, and I thought about it, but I don't want it. I don't want it to be so one-sided. I don't want this to turn into a lecture unless you want it to be. Like I'm down to talk about things, and I'm sure you have some perspective.
I don't think that anything that you would want to tell me about it would be productive in a conversation like this.
Why not?
You'd have to explain it to me. Do you want this to turn into like a 5-hour live stream?
Well, I mean, you can always tell a very simple, short, succinct version, and then you could expand it if you want.
Right, dude, what's paganism? Hit me with it.
So paganism
I
is
have no idea.
paganism is essentially used as not Christian. It was basically like a collection of. It was a word used to denote anybody who, like I said, was not Christian. So like you have like the Norse pagans, like they were called pagans. They had their own hierarchy, like they had their own pantheon of gods. Christians now and even historians would potentially call the Romans pagans. The pre-Christian Romans would be called pagans. The Greeks would be called pagans. The Egyptians would be called pagans. They all had like fleshed out pantheons of gods and mythology and all these ideas, but it's still called paganism. And so that's about
Anything that wasn't Christian was pagan.
roughly. I mean, like there's this whole blanket of like tribalism and animism and shamanism and all this stuff. But typically, like Christians and
If
colonial,
it's not Christian, it's pagan.
huh?
If it's not Christian, it's pagan.
Well, yeah, of course you have the other Abrahamic, they would have acknowledged like Jews and Muslims, but like typically anything outside of Abrahamic, and they weren't too exposed to Eastern ideas like Buddhism and Taoism and Hinduism, so that I mean you could say it's pagan, but I mean typically like if you say the pagan, I mean what I think about a lot of times I think about the Norse a lot because their form of paganism still survives heavily, but the Celtic, the British, the pre-Romanized British and the pre-Christianized British people were more barbaric and they were pagans. Like they had like their own gods. They had like variations and stuff like that. So, but I think paganism is really something that's important and it's something that I want to bring back in a lot of ways. And I think I think Christianity. I think that Christianity is like the fact that it kind of dominated paganism is still something that I'm trying to understand and trying to research. One of the biggest things is like how did the Roman fucking Empire that was like the most you talked about. So you said that you know felt that Christianity was like a building block of Western civilization, but you have to take into consideration that the Roman Empire was at its peak before Christianity even hit, right? And so like if you made an argument with any historian about what was a bigger influence on Western society, like Roman society or you know Christianity, I mean it's a decent debate. I mean they're both big factors, but you do have to take that into consideration. Um,
And I said this to somebody the other day, like they were saying like books, blah 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 blah, and something something religion, blah, and it really comes down to culture, right? So it's not necessarily the religion. Religion helps impart cultural values to a society, but like it is what is the society's culture?
right?
Like, and
Yeah.
that's the big issue that we're having right now, right? Like everybody would say like, and I've seen this argument like other places like, oh, you come from this like predominantly white country, right? Like, so we're gonna enslave you when you come over here because you're Irish.
Right.
Like you potato fuck, vodka making fuck, like right, right? Like even if you're white, like people will hate you because you're from a different city. That's why sports are such a big thing because like it's an artificial.
Yeah, like it's tribalism. It's like war, and we're better, and you're different, and you're other. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, but like when it comes down to it, it is like what is the culture?
yeah. I mean, these things are all like adjacent to one another, and they all affect one another. So like race, culture, religion, politics, war, economics. These things are all interwelded. You're saying it's all about culture, and like yes, culture is
It's
a big,
class and culture.
huh?
It's class and culture.
Well, class is part of economic. Like it all ties in together. Like
Class
it's
has a completely different culture from us.
yeah, yeah. Wealth determines culture. Like there's a wealthy culture, a poor culture. Like yeah, and there's racial cultures and there's music cultures and there's regional cultures.
I have
There's
more in common with a nigger than I do with anybody else, and you might have to cut that out, but yeah.
beep. I mean, yeah, I guess like compare. You said than anybody else. Like I mean, it just depends on what you're. You know, if yes, like I don't mean. Like you have more in common with the average black person than you do with like a wealthy elite. Like yeah, like I don't know. That's a very significant statement.
It's not a
You just
fact.
wanted to be
It's
edgy.
just a fact.
So let's get this podcast started. What were some ideas? What were some topics that we wanted to touch coming into this?
Something about gangs, something
Gangbangs.
else, something else.
What you said? Technology gangs. Did you say currency or something or technology?
Might have been currency. I know
Uh,
that I've like brought up currency to you recently.
let's. We've already been going for like probably like an hour. We could probably go for like another like 20, 30 minutes. Uh,
Yeah.
technology. We've talked about technology already. Gangs. Like, what do you? So, what gangs? Like, what do you think about gangs?
I don't know, like and I didn't get too much into it over the last like 2 days, but I just like the gang culture is really interesting to me because like gangs exist inside of like the police, like right, like a lot of people say like, oh, the police are the biggest gang in the United States, right? But like there are gangs within the police, there's gangs in the military,
Well,
there's gangs in the street, there's gangs in.
well. So to transition from what we were already talking about, like we talked about tribalism, we talked about communities, and we talked about culture, and gang is almost just like another word for that. Like so, like uh, semantically, what is a gang? Like what is a gang? Like is Christianity a gang? Like
It's a hierarchy. It's a criminal hierarchy.
so is the government a gang? Like I mean, people would say
Yeah,
that. Yeah,
yeah,
Like Alan Moore used to say that like he believed in anarchy, and he believed that we live in an anarchy. It's just that the government and the world order is just the biggest gang that took over. Like that's pretty
yeah,
much what it is. Like it's
yeah. It's hierarchy. Gangs are just criminal hierarchy.
so it's criminal hierarchy versus like a business is like a non-criminal hierarchy. So that's the difference.
I would not call a beneficial hierarchy a gang.
Yeah, but hierarchies are good. Yeah, are efficient.
They're a natural part of
Order.
society.
Yeah, they're a
The,
natural
the,
way that
the idea
humans
that you
organize.
can organize things without hierarchy is retarded because you would be the guy saying no hierarchy.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Um, Yeah, I don't know if there's too many points there. I mean, gangs are gangs. Gang, gang.
I like it. You're getting there. Close. There you go. Oh, there. Oh, oh, he did it. He did it. He did it.
I'm gonna get shot in the street by like a crip tomorrow.
No, probably not. But you will look retarded.
Bird up. Well, I don't know. We've been talking naturally for a little while. We got some good content. I might go ahead and we can go ahead and just dick around, just wind down, off the books, off the record. I'm gonna go ahead and shut it down, and then we'll just